Welcome to Practical Changemakers, a carbon positive story. I'd like to acknowledge that we're speaking to you today on Wajak Noongar Boodja and to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. My name is Louise Tarrier and I'm the CEO of Carbon Positive Australia. Our mission is to empower and encourage everyone in Australia to take action that revitalises and improves the health of landscapes and communities. We do this via our carefully selected Australian tree planting projects and by providing inspiring education programs. Through our work, we get to talk to and spend time with people who are working for the health of our environment every day. These practical change makers and leaders are an inspiration in our changing world. It's my pleasure to introduce some of them to you and for you to hear more about their work, to be inspired to and to find out ways you can also become a practical change maker. I'm absolutely delighted to say today that my guest is Natalie Isaacs. Nat is the founder of 1 Million Women, a global movement of women and girls who take practical action to fight dangerous climate change by changing the way that they live. Her first book, Every Woman's Guide to Saving the Planet, published in 2018, has been republished in the UK and the US in 2021. And Natalie's just released her second book, Right Here, Right Now, which was released in July here in Australia and will be released internationally in September 2022. Since launching 1 Million Women in 2009, Natalie has dedicated herself to empowering women to act on climate change. Under her leadership, 1 Million Women has grown from scratch into a movement of over 1 million women. She's deeply invested in building a better world for today and future generations, and she believes that we're living in a critical decade for climate action. And we're all needed to drive that transformational change by 2030. Nat, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here today. I've kind of known about 1 Million Women for many years, and I know the amazing work that you do, but I'd love you to tell our audience just a little bit more about it so they can be as impressed as I am.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for that lovely introduction and for having me. It's really lovely to be able to talk about 1 Million Women. Yes, so it's a big question. I started 1 Million Women about 12 years ago. And I used to be a cosmetics manufacturer, so my life was a really different life before I started 1 Million Women. And I thought climate action and climate change was somebody else's issue, and that I was a cosmetics manufacturer. So it's not in my job description to save the planet. And so I just didn't do anything about it, and was quite disempowered. But the very simple or short story is I got our household electricity consumption down, and when I did that, I got it down by 20%. And when I saw the bill and I saw I had saved all this pollution and money at the same time, it was actually in that moment where I realized I'm actually really powerful. And imagine if millions of us did just that. That has to make a difference somehow. And so I went on and I followed the kind of trail of waste. I thought, what else is wasteful in my house? So we went on and got our household food waste down by, something massive like 80%. And I stopped over consuming. And and before I knew it, I had gone from the camp of inaction, feeling disempowered, to literally living climate action through everything I did. And I didn't know much about climate change. I just knew I was doing things that made a difference. And I thought that there must be millions of women out there like I was, disengaged on this issue for whatever reason. And so I thought, if I could find a way to bring them along the road of empowerment, then they would change their lives too. And so that really is how 1 Million Women started. And with the support of really a lot of women and men to help me get it up and running, that is how the story goes with how I started 1 Million Women. And the goal was to reach a million women and to empower them to live climate action through everything we do.
And you must feel so proud of that, because you've actually achieved that. You have those 1 million women now across the world, because it's not just Australia, is it? It's worldwide that these women have joined your campaign.
It is. It's worldwide. But because when I started, because I didn't know very much about how to build a movement, or I didn't know much about, climate change. But when I was as a cosmetics manufacturer, I used to create brands, and from concept to getting the brand on the shelf, it used to take 6 months. So when I was working on 1 Million Women, I thought, how hard can this be? It'll take me 6 months to get to 1 million women. And it actually took 10 years.
Yeah.
And it's not 1 million women on a website. We count our 1 million women across all our channels. We have our social media channels and our website, and so we count it across platforms. But I realized that what the proposition is with 1 million women at the beginning was to literally change how you live. And it's a hard ask, because you're trying to ask women to, because we're a women-focused movement, but, to change the way you live in this very high structure, this framework of our high consumption society. So I didn't make 1 million women in the first 6 months, but I really got to learn how to build a movement.
And that's so incredible, isn't it? Because I think that, to me, is the more powerful part, is that actually, if you join a movement like that you're not alone. So you've got that sense of, because it can be, we've all got families, or, even if we haven't, we kind of know that experience of maybe at work or whatever, and you're doing the right thing and everyone else is not joining in, or they're not feeling like, I don't know, you're just getting into that situation where you feel like people aren't really taking part, and it can feel like a lonely journey.
Absolutely. And I think that the essence of 1 Million Women is that you are not alone, that we're a community of women, and that collectively our actions make a huge difference. And we've always wanted to show, imagine if 1 million of us did this, what result would that have? Or if 1 million of us got our, I think back at the beginning, one of the stats that I was always talking about was, if 1 million households in Australia got their electricity consumption down by 20%, which is the thing that I started with, it would be that powerful that it could shut down 2 small coal-fired power stations.
That's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's one of the messages that Carbon Positive Australia that we try and get over to people, particularly when we're doing the podcast like this, is there's so many ways that as an individual you have got so much power. And I think the media and just in general, we can feel like, well, if the government doesn't do something, if organizations don't do something, then, what can we do? But actually we have an immense amount of power, don't we, as individuals?
It's so much power. Everything, the fabric of society is based on the collection of individuals.
Exactly.
Where we all start as an individual, and whether we are an individual as part of a household, or as part of a community, or part of an organization, or part of a city and part of a country, we're individuals. And the first, and I think that the idea with 1 Million Women is that we are women linking arms and doing this together.
Yeah. And that's such a blessing, isn't it, to feel that you've got other people kind of behind your back, and you are linked together, and just moving forward together, because the whole climate issues can feel so disempowering. And I really want to get onto your book, actually, because for those of you who don't know, Nat's just released a book, as I said in the introduction, which is called Right Here, Right Now. And it's a book about how women can lead the way. So how we can take not just individual action, and I don't want to take this away, but what I'm reading from the book is that how we can actually lead too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So it was, It was a really important book to write because my first book was about how do we as individuals live climate action? What are the small things, not small, everything we do is big or small, it makes an enormous difference. And I think that my first book was really talking about, well, it was actually a memoir about how I got the point on climate change and then started 1 Million Women. But the back of the book was this toolkit about, okay, here's all the aspects of our lives and here's all the things we can do to cut carbon. And this book, which I was just saying, it was really important for me to share with everybody, because fundamentally it is still about what we must do in our lives to cut carbon and how we live. But it's also about the bigger picture, about how do we live in our communities and how do we engage with the people around us. How do we define ourselves not as consumers of this planet, but as citizens of the world? And how do we share our climate stories? Because this decade needs more storytellers. It needs storytellers of climate so that we can connect with other people about how we feel about our raw and honest take on, what we're doing in our lives or how we feel about climate. But we must do more of that in this decade. And it's also about how we use optimism as a strategy for staying the course and not slipping into despair. And of course it's about how this decade, because it's about it's called Right Here, Right Now, because it talks about why this is our moment. This is our moment in time, and this decade is the decade that counts. 2030 is the line in the sand, and we have to be doing, as citizens of this planet, we have to be doing absolutely everything that we can to cut carbon or to prevent carbon from entering the atmosphere, and from engaging in our communities, because everything we do matters in this decade. But it matters more right this moment in time, right now. Everything we do this moment is important.
Everything we do has an impact, from how we commute to work to what we buy at the grocery store. Our lifestyle choices are contributing to our carbon footprint. Did you know Australians have one of the highest personal carbon footprints in the world? The good news is we can change that. Measuring your footprint is easy with our carbon footprint calculator. Custom designed for Australians, it gives you an accurate footprint calculation so you can really know your number. You'll also learn practical everyday ways to reduce and offset the impact of your lifestyle to help combat climate change. You can calculate your footprint at carbonpositiveaustralia.org.au/calculate.
And so the book kind of takes us on this journey about what are the things that we must do as women in this decade, because this decade needs more women. It needs us to step into our agency. We need to be able to speak our truths to power, and so it takes us along that journey about what can we do as women in this decade to make the biggest impact on climate action. But sorry, I haven't taken a breath. That was a very long answer.
And I just wanted to pick you up on the storytelling part as well, because I think we hear so much doom and gloom from the media, and it's almost like we're faced with the problem, but we very rarely seem to be faced or presented with solutions. And yet it's storytelling, isn't it, that can help us build what the future might look like, what a positive future might look like. So I just wondered if you just kind of illuminate a bit, because I really enjoyed that part of the book, actually, that idea that we can tell better stories, I suppose.
Absolutely. And I think that we need to be having more conversations on climate. And a good way to do it is to be able to tell our story. And I was saying the other night I had my book launch it was such a beautiful night. It was at the Australian Museum, and it was such a nice night. And I actually had the Minister for Tanya Plibersek, the Minister for Environment, launching my book. But one of the things that I was talking about that night was that when I got the point on climate change, I was really I was overwhelmed by the fears that it's always women that are kind of overwhelmed with, that I'm an imposter. I'm not a climate scientist. How can I be someone to lead a movement on climate? Like, I'm a cosmetics manufacturer. I was consumed by anxiety that, what if someone asked me a question I didn't know the answer? I'm not good enough. Like all those things that women are always so affected by. And I was really consumed by that. I didn't even know who the Environment Minister was back then. And so it was a hard thing to step into my agency. But the thing that really carried me in those early days was my story, because it was real, it was honest, it was my story about how I got the point on climate change. And it was simple. It was about electricity, and it was, no one could take that away from me. So when I could just sit back and settle in and tell my story, and then witness it resonating with another woman, because it was usually an audience of women, and that's when I would feel, oh my goodness, I feel empowered by this. Here's one person that is, I can see it, they're connecting with me, they're going, that's me too, I'm like that, that means I can do this too. And so ever since then, all I do is tell my story. If I'm doing a panel discussion or I'm doing a keynote, I never show slides. I just get up there and tell my story as it is, because that's truth to power. And I think that if we are all telling our stories about just how we feel about climate, and we resonate with just one other person, that's all we need to resonate with.
Exactly right.
We are leading. Yeah. And that's so powerful.
And isn't it powerful to be told that your story matters and it counts?
And it counts.
Yeah.
It could be someone who, the tips that they have, like how to grow a tomato, or it could be how they, changed from buying single-use plastics, or how they got their supermarket to change to get the imperfect fruit and veg up, and like it could, any of those stories are real stories about what we're doing. And every time you resonate with somebody else that isn't acting on climate, they go, okay, well, that's not hard, I can do it.
Yeah. And you've proven that through the women that have joined your movement, who've said that very thing, isn't it? Hey, that's not hard. I can actually do that, and I can make the change. And I just wanted to, because you've got some really amazing women that have endorsed your book. And I just wanted to read just one of those, Mary Robinson, who was the former president of Ireland and the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. And she says, what beautiful storytelling from the heart. This is a rallying call to women everywhere to be part of the solution for the climate crisis. And Natalie helps us not just to imagine the transformational changes we need in this critical decade for action, but how to get going right now in our lives. And to me, that was just such a wonderful endorsement of the book, because, in my reading of it, that's exactly what I got out of it. Look, I can do this. I have the power to make changes. And, we were always saying to people, you've got huge power in how you choose to spend your dollars, where you choose to spend your dollars, who you invest your pension fund with, how you, at work, how you can influence your employer. We come across so many people, in their day-to-day lives who are really, they feel wonderfully empowered because they've managed to push something through at work, maybe on waste, or or on asking their employer to take some form of action, to be carbon neutral, for example. So I think, and the way that you put that over, that we can do that through telling our story, it's simple but so powerful.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you for that.
No, I think it's amazing. And it just speaks to that kind of ability that we've all got. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about was optimism as a strategy.
Yes.
Tell me more.
Yes. Well, it is so important because, we are faced with, like, every day we're bombarded with the bad news about climate. Last year, code red for society or code red for the planet was the IPCC report. And it is very hard to digest all the bad news. And it is easy to go from inaction or denial that it's happening and slip right across to despair and miss that big chunk in the middle, which is action. And that's the place where we all need to stay. We need to be in that middle piece. But it is easy to turn off, to switch off, to just go, oh my goodness, this is way too much for me to do anything about. I'm just gonna do nothing. And this decade is going to be a rough ride. Yeah. We have got so much to get through this decade. We've got to reduce our emissions by 50% as a minimum by 2030. And that takes, of course, it's government policy, and it's who we elect, and it's cities and it's countries, but it's also all of us. It's all of us. We have to be all engaged and all involved. We can't any longer, and I don't mean any longer, but we have to do it all. We can't say, well, I'm not doing anything, it's my government, that I'll just vote. And of course, voting is critical, but we have to do it all, and it needs us all. And so we have to stay optimistic. And sure, there's going to be days where we slip into despair, and there's going to be days where we go, I just want to not think about it. But if in our hearts and our core is optimistic and hopeful, then we will be there for the long haul. And so that's why this chapter talks about, we have to use it as a strategy. I mean, you would have read, like, down the, nearer to the end of the chapter, from Christiana Figueres, who was the amazing woman who was responsible really for the Paris Agreement.
What an amazing woman. What an amazing woman. She's
such a good friend. Like, she's a really dear friend. Like, honestly, I truly love her. She's a good friend. But I've never met anybody as optimistic as Christiana. And she says something so beautiful in the book about how we've all got to just, put the doom and gloom aside and be optimistic and just get on with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just going to read her little short snippet as well, where she says, we often hear that women can play a critical role in the global response to climate change, but we seldom go beyond that statement. And Natalie shows us the still unused potential we have as women and how to live climate responsibility in our daily lives. And I think that is that optimism, isn't it, that she does power through with all the time. And, you've got to be an optimist, haven't you, to have put together the Paris Agreement and to get all those people. I mean, you've got to be an optimist. You couldn't even begin to think about doing that, could you, unless you were?
And I mean, I don't know if your listeners know this podcast too, but it's Outrage and Optimism. So she talks about, on her podcast, about why we have to be outraged, but why we have to keep our optimistic hat on. And I think that is absolutely that's
Yeah, it's not la optimism, isn't it? It's not that I'm closing my eyes, this isn't happening, so we'll just all be optimistic and it's all going to be all right. It's I love the phrase hope in action. That to me is always a really great phrase, because it kind of says that while you're taking the action, you might not know the end result, but you're going to keep hopeful in that doing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that is the thing. It's about, we can't be passively optimistic. We can't sit back and go, it's all going to be okay, because it always is. Mm-hmm. We are living through climate. We're all living through the effects of climate change. All of us. Mm-hmm. We've just look at the last few years of bushfires and floods and drought and all happening within the pandemic. And it's every one of us is being affected by climate change at the now.
Yeah, every day in our life, isn't it? Every day.
In the future. Yeah. And so we have to have optimism in our core belief, but it has to be active. And only active optimism can only come with action.
Yeah.
It can only come with the things that we're doing in our lives. And that means things like the way that we live. How do you live with the least impact on the planet? How do we get our food waste down? Because it's a huge, it contributed to climate change. How do we reduce our household energy? How do we stop over consuming and think about our transport how do we get from A to B with the least impact on the planet? How do we use our voice, and how do we tell our stories and vote for the right politicians? But more than that, how do we have conversations with our local MPs, regardless of what side of politics they're on, that will champion climate action? How do we lift them up, these courageous politicians that are going to speak up on climate action, even if their party isn't?
Yes, exactly right. Cool. Yeah, and it's that kind of, I think as well, sometimes people think that action almost means like wearing a hair shirt, don't they? And that it's all going to be doom and gloom and, oh my goodness, I'm not going to be able to do. We see the nots and the can'ts. Yeah. And actually it can be great fun, and it can mean that actually life's more enjoyable.
Exactly. Oh, totally. I know. I mean, I never, this last 12 years, I can't remember the exact quote that I say in the book, but it's like it's been the greatest awakening of my life. And I absolutely mean that, because I've always been a lover of life. I've always been a passionate person, but I never got it. I never got that connection with country and with earth. And I had a different approach. I loved going to the beach and walking in a rainforest and all the things that you get from Mother Earth, but I never gave back. I just took it all. I thought I was like, the Earth Mother, but like that, I just thought I thought I was connected, but once I got the point on climate change, I mean, really got the point, not just up here in my head, like in my heart, understood that everything I do shapes the world. Everything that we all do shapes the world. And when I realized that literally in my heart, it was easy then to change the way that I lived. And, I think it's once you understand the relationship that you have with the earth. And there's a chapter in the book about connecting to country, and what I've learned personally from my First Nations friends and the women in my life, and that they're in the book, that have helped me understand what it means to connect to country, and what the land and the sea and the waterways and are living systems, and when you can get that, all you want to do is care for country and for each other. It makes us more, I think we have this incredible opportunity, this moment in our lives, to be kinder, more compassionate people, and to look at life differently. That happiness isn't about, particularly with, first world countries, it isn't about how much stuff we have. Although in this room right now, there's a lot of stuff from my children, as I was telling you earlier. But it's not about how much stuff we have. It's about the love of Earth and each other.
I love this saying, all our relations. I think it's probably North American, but it's just that connection that we see. The land as, part of us. They're part of our family. The river's part of our family. That everything is part of us. And you're right. Once you get that connection, that there's not that separation between yourself and the other beings. And when I say beings, I'm including rocks and, mountains and trees. And, when we get that connection, as you say, it's very hard. And how do we not want to care?
Yeah. Exactly. How do we not want to care? And I think there's got to be a reset now. It has to happen now. Like, we are running out. Like, there is no doubt we're running out of time. There's no doubt. And there is a lot to be optimistic about. I feel really energized and optimistic. The Tanya Plibersek, the Minister for the Environment and Water, said the other night at my book launch that yes, that it was a big week the other week, getting the climate bill through, but this is just the beginning. That's what she said. It's just the beginning.
And we really hope that that's the case, don't we? Because it has to be the beginning, because we're late starting, aren't we?
Yeah. Oh my God. We're so late starting, and we've lost a decade, and the climate wars that have been just I don't even have the right word for it, but it cannot go on. It absolutely cannot go on. And so Australia has an opportunity right now, and I see so much energy around me. That, like, when I went to COP last year, the big climate change conference
in Glasgow. Yeah.
And I was there, and I went feeling ashamed. Like, I remember one year not so long ago when Mary Robinson and I were catching a taxi, just trying to think which COP it was. And she's actually going, you should be ashamed of yourself. Like, she wasn't talking to me personally. But I say that is how we're viewed around the world.
Yeah.
That Australia, what are we doing? We're always the dinosaur we always win the dinosaur of the day or the week at these climate change conferences. And I'm going to go this year, and I have a lot more hope and optimism in my heart this time around.
We have so much opportunity in Australia, don't we, to be a world leader in sustainable energy resources, in sustainable living, in so many ways. We could be at the forefront. We've got the scientists, we've got the people that've got the ability to manufacture, we've got the people who love country here, and we've also got that Indigenous wisdom. So we've got everything. All of those tools are in our toolkit, aren't they, for Australia to be
a
world superpower in it. Exactly. And we've got sunshine, of course, which is a big help.
A really big help. Yeah, we could be a renewable energy superpower, and we will be. And it is, and so there's a lot of good things happening that we need to just embrace, and if every one of us was doing something, it will change the world. It will change the world.
We can all as individuals change the world.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, I just want to say a huge thank you. I want you just to tell everyone about the book, or it's called Right Here, Right Now by Natalie Alzix, the founder of One Million Women. You can buy it already in Australia. Where can they find it?
So it's available in, I think, in every bookstore across the country, but also you can get it online at Booktopia. And Booktopia also has an audio version, because I did the narration for the audio book.
Fantastic!
So that was a very interesting experience, because I got COVID a couple of months ago, and right at the time I was meant to do my book, the audio book, and so we had to wait, and obviously but the week after, and my voice was, so if anyone does listen to the audio, you'll hear that I'm talking a bit like this because I lost my voice. But anyway, so there's the audio book and an ebook, and then the paperback, and so you can get that online at Booktopia.
And then for those, and we do have listeners worldwide, so it's not just here in Australia. So for those who aren't in Australia, when can they? I think it was September. You said that they can get hold of a copy.
Actually, soon.
Oh, fabulous.
Yes, like it's next month. And yes, so next month, the book will be released in the UK, the US and Canada.
Fantastic. And look as well, I'm sure there are listeners out here thinking, okay, give me some tips and hints. I can't even say it, but you know what I mean.
Ideas and solutions.
Give me some ideas and solutions
Yeah.
of what we can actually do as part of 1 Million Women. So how do they find 1 Million Women, and how do they get involved?
Yes. So there are so many places that you can start your journey with 1 Million Women. Please follow us on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, and our website, which is the number 1millionwomen.com.au. And we've got this, in fact, I better not forget to say this, in next month, we're launching a new campaign called I'm Ready. And it is the work we're going to be doing over the next 2 years. And it is about, and the book is part of all of that, but it's about I'm ready to take on climate action for the next 2 years, because these are the 2 years that count. And we're going to be doing in-home, like party plan style gatherings and training and workshops and teaching women how to have conversations with their MPs and how to live climate action. But we're trying to because 2.5 or 3 years with the pandemic, we've been very quiet on the ground. And so this is our opportunity to get out of social media and get more on the ground.
And I think women are crying out for that, and men, of course. I think everyone is crying out for that connection, aren't they? That face-to-face connection. It's so important, because as human beings, it's what we live for, really, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. Absolutely. So so that will hopefully we're running very late with it, but hopefully we'll get it up next month, and that will see us through for the next couple of years.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to chat today. I just love the book, and we'll be definitely sharing it with all of my friends and associates, because I think it's such a great read, and it really is that call to optimistic leadership, and I love it.
Oh, thank you, Louise. Thank you. That's really lovely. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Very welcome.
For over 21 years, Carbon Positive Australia has planted trees and sequestered carbon. Our tree planting increases canopy cover and biodiversity, and also creates positive climate health and well-being outcomes. We take a nature-led approach and are passionate about providing ecologically sensitive planting that protects our environment. We only plant biodiverse native species and specialise in working with landholders to create innovative solutions for carbon planting. We are renowned for our research and monitoring of ecological outcomes. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you can plant trees with us by donating at carbonpositiveaustralia.org.au/donate.